So today we're making chicken bog. Use Carolina Gold rice. If you know anything about this rice, this is the rice that made South Carolina the richest colony in the nation at one point. It also completely changed the landscape of South Carolina, literally with how much rice was grown. If you were to look from space, you could see still where old rice paddies were still at. This rice is a little different than the rice you're gonna buy in the grocery store though, all right? So it's a shorter grain. It's actually an African grain of rice. There's two major strains of rice. There's Asian, which is the white rice that most of us are used to, and then you have the African grain here. This is Carolina Gold is kind of the progeny of an African strain of rice, right? I urge you to smell it, to touch it, to get very familiar with it. It is a grain that I feel like all people should very much respect. Because of its history, because of the labor that goes into growing it. So what I'm doing as I rinse this rice, I'm just swishing it around, right? For me, this has always been a very magical part of cooking rice, is that swirling and swishing, because I know my grandmama make her rice like this. I know my best friend makes her rice like this. I know my ancestors did their rice like this, right? Now, this is nutrient dense. If you got long hair, you want long hair, you want to keep some of this rice, wash your hair with it, all right? What do you do when you're outside all day, toiling in the fields, but you want something good? You put a pot of rice on, you and whoever else from the community, throw in that pot whatever else y'all might have together, right? Make a big communal dish. So essentially that's what we're doing today with chicken bog. The main thing about a paraloo or a bog is cooking the rice in the liquid with whatever protein, vegetable, whatever it may be. Since we're doing chicken, I got chicken stock, I got some pulled chicken here, and it has some delicious Cooper River and Dewey sausage. All right, this is a local brand that you can get. Find this guy right here, he'll let you know how to get it. If not, I go for Roger Wood. It is the sausage of the South, all right? But to make this easier, if you don't want to sit all day and boil your bog, have to boil the chicken, add your rice in, make sure everything is correct, here's a cheat. Buy you a rotisserie chicken from the grocery store. I say every time you go grocery shopping, you need to buy a rotisserie chicken that's already cooked. You can make it into a million things, but this is gonna make your life easy. This will make a bog that might take 3-4 hours to cook, cut down to about 30 to 45 minutes, all right? To make your stock, you drop that chicken in a pot of water with some seasonings, maybe a little onion, a little celery if you like. Let it go for about 30 or so minutes. You'll see the color change in the water, you'll taste it, you'll know it's ready. You pull that chicken out, let it cool, pull all that meat off the bone. I like the skin too, all right? We don't waste around here. Pull it all off, you got your pulled chicken. I personally went ahead and seared off some sausage just to make it a little bit easier on us today. 3 to 4 cups of some sort of stock or cooking liquid to 1 cup of rice. The difference also is that we're not going to steam this rice, like I said. We're going to keep the top off, we're gonna stir it like you would a risotto to release those starches out of the rice, all right? So you're gonna let this start coming up. As soon as it comes to a boil, I'll give it a good stir. I'll add my chicken, I'll add my sausage. We'll turn it on low and we'll just wait. You need to season at every step. You need to taste your food at every single step. I'm a believer in the black holy trinity of garlic powder, onion powder, and paprika. and then you go from there, right? You add in, I personally like a lot of black pepper in my chicken bog, personally. I would add in, if you got some seasonal, I like to cook the things that just feel like home, right? So very stereotypical Charlestonian, I like to cook shrimp and grits. I like fried fish. I like fried shark. I like anything with rice. Smothered turkey wings, macaroni and cheese, greens. I do. I cook like I have children because I learned how to cook from my grandmama, right? So I cook like meals. If it's really cute, I probably won't eat it, but it depends. Like, bunnies are kind of cute. They taste really good too though, right? Squirrels, they taste really good, right? So there's some things I won't eat particularly, but as far as cooking stuff, you know, I think for me the biggest thing is cooking fresh, cooking local. I cook a lot of vegetables, I eat a lot of vegetables. I think the way that we eat in South Carolina gets such a bad rep because people don't know how we really eat here. Like, I crave a summer peach, right? I get excited when it's time for watermelon. Like, I get excited when it's winter because I can get good greens, right? My greens are going to be sweet. So, like, I grew up not understanding this, like, very negative perceived kind of viewpoint about Southern food and about South Carolina food, because we don't eat just rice. We eat a lot, but we don't eat just rice. We don't eat just grits, right? But people have this notion that all we doing is eating fried food, overly salted. I didn't grow up like that. Like when I wanted a snack, my granny would tell me, go on that table and get you a piece of fruit. I grew up being able to go and get pecans from somebody's yard, or maybe the neighbors bringing by some grapefruit and some oranges out of their yard, right? Like, so those are the things that I like to cook because I like to eat those things.
Did you do anything special to them? I know there were local greens and all that kind of good stuff. Did you do anything special to them things?
When I make greens, I do collard greens, turnip greens, mustard greens. So that's usually the big difference. And then, no, not really. I put smoked turkey. I think I put smoked turkey necks and wings in that one. Onion powder, garlic powder, paprika. I like to put a little chili flake in mine, like mine's a little spice to it. And if you feel real jazzy, cook them in chicken stock rather than just like your regular turkey or ham broth. But that's it. And I just let them cook and I just give them attention. We got it. It's gonna start boiling. So I'm gonna go ahead and add in my pulled chicken. I'm kind of greedy, so I'm gonna do a good bit of chicken. Shout out to Publix for the good rotisserie chicken. And like I said, I had some andouille sausage here, so it has a little bit of a kick to it already. You want to make sure that you're trying your ingredients as well before you start to season in your pot, right? The sausage is going to add some salt to it. The chicken is already seasoned as well, so you don't want to go too crazy. You don't want to add too much salt at the beginning, all right? Then we'll get us a good stir. Black pepper, I got it. What is it? Go ham with the black pepper. Don't feel ashamed of the black pepper. Garlic powder, onion powder. All right, so what we're gonna do is let this come up to a boil. As soon as it hits a boil, I'm gonna give it a good stir, then I'm gonna turn it down all the way to low, the lowest setting, all right? I'm not putting a lid on this though. If I was cooking this regular and I wanted my rice to be nice and fluffy, I would put a lid on it, let it sit for about 15 to 20 minutes, take it off the heat, all right? If you want individual, loose, nice grains, you have to fluff it with a fork. For bog, we don't need to fluff it with a fork. We want some of that starch to be released out of the rice, so we're gonna give it a stir every now and then, like I said, to make sure that it's not touching, it's not scorching really on the bottom with that rice. So how I feel about ingredients being gentrified. I believe that there is a really hard line to walk professionally as a chef when you want to understand, respect ingredients, the cultures that they come from, because you genuinely love and have passion for what you do. I think that that's one thing. I think it's another thing when we see dishes or ingredients that are and have been historically eaten specifically by Black people. I think that sometimes we forget, I think one of the panelists kind of touched on a little bit, is that while these ingredients, for example, Carolina gold rice, okra, things like that, they come from West Africa. Those were not a thing in America until they were brought during the slave trade, right? They are not as equally as much of white Southerners' culture as it is Black culture, but I think we do have to kind of keep in mind that, as one of the panelists mentioned, Black folk were cooking these dishes and these ingredients for white people. So there is a really hard line to walk of saying, well, or of white Southerners specifically feeling like, well, this is our culture too. It is, but we got to talk about how that story came to be, how that came to be a part of your culture, because it originally wasn't, right? Now, I will say this, when I go someplace, maybe like, when I lived in Albuquerque, New Mexico, somebody had shrimp and grits on the menu. And I say, well, that's funny, because don't nobody really here eat grits. It's a lot of indigenous people, indigenous cultures there eat grits, right? But the average person in Albuquerque, New Mexico is not eating shrimp and grits. And it had like green chile and like all these other things on there. So me being me, if you know me, I say, well, can you ask the chef where he's from? I would like to know. I need to know a little bit more about how shrimp and grits got on the menu in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And again, a lot of times it is very genuine. Chefs get excited about an ingredient because it comes to them. Maybe they saw it on social media. Maybe they have a connection with one of these companies, right? And they're inspired by it. My issue comes in where chefs specifically don't do the research before they put something on their menu and then they claim it as their own, right? So I'm not opposed to people using the ingredients. I just want people to respect them and respect the stories and respect the cultures and be open to listening to the people from those cultures about their dishes. We're very touchy about our food, right? We take it very seriously. So a lot of chefs don't like to hear that. A lot of white male chefs, especially, don't like to hear that. They don't want to hear it. They could care less. I also have a problem when I see places, in Charleston even, that will have shrimp and grits on their menu and it's a $30 bowl of shrimp and grits. They're not buying their shrimp from local shrimpers. They're getting it from Cisco or US Food, so they're getting it frozen from China probably, right? You can literally go off any dock in Charleston and get your own shrimp. You literally can, right? Or you can go and support any of the local farmers markets or any of the local seafood markets and get fresh shrimp. So I have a problem when those things happen, right? We get a lot of chefs that come from up north or out west that come down here. Maybe they're very genuinely interested in the food culture, but again, they don't take time to be in those communities. There's a lovely place in Charleston that has a $250 per person seating for dinner, only do dinner. They were very happy and excited to tell me, well, we get our crabs shipped in every day from Norway. And I'm like, I got a chicken on a string. If y'all want to go out back and get these blue crabs, right? Like, so there's this perception of wanting to refine or make these ingredients that are already amazing into something better, or to not respect the culture and the place that you're in and use the ingredients that people are actually familiar with in your dishes. Growing up and we see okra rice on the menu, or at our house, and now I see okra rice on the menu, I'm like, y'all don't even like okra. Y'all don't know how to cook it. So how do you know what it is, right? But y'all can see we're starting to get a little thicker. I'm just stirring. Usually if I was making Carolina Gold rice, I usually do it on the stove first and then in the oven. Auntie Mills has a really good recipe online for you to follow. It does usually take a little bit longer to cook because of the nature of the grain. It's shorter, it's more kind of oval, fatter in shape, I guess if you want to say it. So it does cook differently, but when you do the stovetop method, 15 or so minutes, maybe 20 depending on what you like, this will be ready to go. Again, I'm about to taste and season.
Chef, can you confirm for me or for us, when it comes to restaurant pricing and ingredients pricing, I feel like what was once waste is now considered a delicacy, and that's causing the prices to rise.
You talking about oxtail? Yeah. Turkey neck, chicken feet, yeah.
Really dependent on the restaurant industry, the prices being raised. I mean, I understand supply and demand, and
a lot of it honestly is supply and demand. A lot of it is wanting to cut costs in your restaurant to make a profit. Because I always tell people, if you own a restaurant, these people, they're not making money. It's very rare that a restaurateur is actually making a profit from having the restaurant. They might be breaking even, and that's a blessing if you can break even in a restaurant, right? So they're looking for ways to get cheaper ingredients, elevate them to rectify the cost of why they're charging so much for it, right? It's not necessarily their fault because they can't control the prices. They can only control the prices on their menu. And I tell people, especially now, you see a lot of places, a lot of states that are trying to do away with tipping or making, gratuities already added, or we're paying our workers higher wages. It's a delicate balancing act, right? You want people to get paid correctly. You want people to be able to have health insurance and dental insurance, but you're gonna have to pay a little bit more. I will say I found something really, really interesting. I just came back from a week-long trip across southern Mississippi, right? Went to like 7 different cities in a week. The cost of everything on their menu, I don't think I saw a single dish that was more than $30. And I'm talking about like a filet was $27 on a menu, right? For an 8-ounce filet menu. It's insane. They don't really have the same demand. The people in that place don't make a lot of money to be able to go out and spend an exorbitant amount of money. But more importantly, they actually really utilize the farmers and fishermen that are in the Gulf and in that area, right? So they are getting a cheaper price for a better ingredient. I'm finding that that's a little difficult here to do in South Carolina, and I think a lot of it is because we've grown so much in tourism. We want the money. And if we can hike them prices up to make some money, then we'll do that. I do wish people would stop buying so much oxtail, though. I would like to be able to buy oxtail again. It's a fine balance. I enjoy being able to go places now and seeing oxtail, seeing turkey neck, seeing pig foot, seeing a fried pig ear sandwich, seeing those things on menus. I like seeing that. I like when they're reasonably priced because I know you probably paid like 50 cents for this pig ear. It's different too as a chef when I can come in and say, all right, I know for these buns you probably paid 25 cents for, so a dish that might cost you $8 to make per person, you're probably getting 3 times the amount of that, right? The money, if the business owner is the right person, is going to the right places. I think people forget you know, to have a restaurant costs a lot of money. We're talking about insurance on a restaurant, insurance for your employees, bills, overhead costs. Don't let there be a single like thing that gets broken in the restaurant, right? Now you out $5,000 and you still got to have service somehow with no working refrigerator. I'm saying this out of memory. So when it's done right, I don't mind paying the extra because I know it's going to a good place. But I do also wish people would find something else to eat. You know, people like to complain, right? Like nowadays that God ain't make enough animals and they need something new. Eat the other part of the animals. Yeah. There's plenty of animals out here. Y'all don't want to eat no squirrel though. And we'll get the USC squirrels for payback. This is our chicken bog. Smells lovely. You can smell it?
Hey,
Well, that's it. Chicken bog. You know?
Oh, yeah, we're gonna go ahead and see what this looks like. Look at that. Oh my God. So good. So good.